Hello and welcome to the 13th episode of What's My Planet Coaster. We are once again back in Project Utopia, continuing to work on various sections of the park. As we remember, this is actually a very complicated park where we have lots of stuff running around. We're based in four main areas, and in this episode, actually in previous episode, we concluded the Rivertown section of the park, and now we are moving on to what little footage I actually have working on the Metropolis area of the park. I had experienced some issues with my recording software and how it did not actually properly record almost all of my work on this area of the park. This is the only footage that actually turned out to be okay. So the Metropolis area of the park is actually already done. Now, Metropolis is an area designed to be kind of an urban city and reflect a more modern society. Um, because a lot of people right now do live in do live in a metropolis and things of that nature. So what I really wanted to do was create, one of those very thick city blocks, very dense area, you see a lot of ads everywhere and stuff like that. Small parks, trying to sprinkle in nature into the ever-growing world of taller buildings and things of that sort. And how that ended up working out seemed to be pretty good. So what I'm actually going to be working on mainly here is a food court. So this is actually going to be the main eating area because each section of the park does have an eating area. This is the eating area for this part of the park. It's actually a very interesting building. Honestly, if I'm looking at it now, it's probably one of the buildings I'm most proud of in this whole project, at least up to this point, because I think it has, with the whole dual layers it has going on, you have the train running through the upper part of it, but you have this whole food court area below it. And I think that the whole circular implementation of this part of the park is actually something I think is really interesting. Um, so we have the rounded edges there, which I think adds a little bit of character to it. As well, we have a little side alleyway that's going to go down to the first aid area and the restrooms. You see me placing the buildings now, but you also notice that the train track does run above it. So I needed something that actually connected the train track to the other end of the railway there. And the way that the roofing works is, I think, that's very interesting. Going in here and checking on some of the employee stuff that I wanted to make sure I got done. Um, what one of my concerns with this project is not really with the whole employee system because there's a lot of very cool stuff that Planet Coaster can do with making your employees happy and giving them all the resources they need and stuff of that sort. But this is not really in the scope of my project, and because of that, you see me just firing them there and being like, "All right, when I actually have to open the park and get some footage of actually guests running around, I'm not gonna have them. I'm gonna rehire a bunch of employees as needed." This is also the first building where I really started to implement a few different design stuff, some different ways that I learned to design stuff in Planet Coaster. I really started to work with reducing the grid size. And what that means is if you look in the bottom right hand corner, you see those two little sliders there. And each one of those sliders is going to represent um, essentially the grid. So you see the little square grid that's going on there. There's a vertical height that I can max out, and there's a horizontal height that I can max out. And so on those grids, what I'm actually working towards is I want to be able to modify those grids and be able to go ahead and change what their actual height is. Because one part of this is that the trade tracks are not actually an even block above where the rest of this part of the park is. And to make sure that that didn't have any impact on the outcome of, I didn't have random walls sticking through the trade tracks and other problems with the park, I ended up elevating a I ended up playing with some of that grid height just to make sure that the train actually looked proper. So you saw that I spent a decent amount of time actually going through raising and lowering those different parts to make the actual heights line up. One thing I will say that's a little bit annoying about Planet Coasters, you'll notice that as I'm trying to merge some of this stuff here, that sometimes the angles don't work out properly. Planet Coasters, I think, where it starts to cut wall pieces at a 45-degree angle, so they actually, line up properly. They didn't have this weird, awkward. It's sharing a texture at the same time, so you start getting that weird cross-fading texture. To avoid that, Planet Coaster, when you have two walls meet at a corner, they cut themselves at a 45-degree angle, so that is not a problem. But that does cause a problem. What happens is if I have a 4H wall and I have a 1H wall that kind of cuts into it, the whole 4H wall is actually going to be affected by that, which I think is a feature that's a little bit dumb, not necessarily something extremely smart. It does sound like something that'd be extremely hard to fix either. Um, Other than that, though, I think the grid system is actually really smart. It definitely gives a lot more customizability than an RC3, as we all know. It definitely helps with some of the problems that you encounter when you're working with the walls and you're not allowed to actually completely 3D rotate the walls. You can 3D move a building in Planet Coaster, but you can't actually take an individual wall and 3D move it unless you make it its own building. And you also can't like use the 3D spinning tool, so you can't make a wall stick out at like a 45-degree angle out of the ground. The walls are always going to be 90 degrees straight up, and I think that's something that could really be improved to help, if someone wants to make a sunken structure or a tilted structure, Leaning Tower of Pisa kind of something. I think that would be something that would really help and enhance that part of the project. Another thing that's kind of annoying me in Planet Coaster is what you can do, which is actually a really great tool, but could use just another touch, is the split from building tool. So sometimes I'm building something and I realize that the textures are conflicting and I want to shift it. Just the roof just needs to be a tad to the left, just so the textures behind it. What you can do is you can actually highlight those blocks, split them from the building, and that'll allow you to go through and actually manually move the piece around. I think this is actually a really great implementation. But one thing you can't do in Planet Coaster is take two different buildings and merge them. And I think it has to do with the grids and making sure the grids are all lined up and stuff. But at the same time, there's a part of me that wishes that I can actually go in and make because there's buildings like this one which end up being 3 or 4 completely separate buildings, which actually gets really hard when I want to move something or I want to delete something or I want to change what I'm working on, because you'll notice that the whole upper half of this building is a different building because of the way I wanted to line up the walls with the train tracks. So I ended up syncing it anyway with the grid size. I worked with the grid size, but I also split the top from the bottom building. So if I actually wanted to delete this building or I wanted to move it, the whole structure a little bit, it would be very difficult because it was not something that this is really fundamentally designed to do. So actually coming up next is going to be a little POV of the Metropolis ride after it all finished. And I want to leave you at that. So, hope you had a great time enjoying this video, and next time we will hop into the wasteland. I hope everyone has a great night. Bye.